if you know how to do these 6 florals, you should be able to create almost any watercolor bouquet. Hey, thank you for tuning into my video. Today I'm going to be showing you the only watercolor florals that you need to know in order to create the most wonderful watercolor bouquets. My all-time favorite, roses. So as I've demonstrated before, key thing is to do a small semicircle in the middle, and then you gradually do bigger semicircles on either side. You add more and more water as you go further out, making the petals bigger and lighter in color so that the edges kind of fade. And here are a few examples of other roses that I have done. For peonies, you start off by doing an oval shape in the middle, and then you do small semicircles on either side, getting larger and larger and lighter as well. And then you add small crescents to the top of the flower to kind of represent the petals that are further away or kind of reaching over the flower. And now I'm adding teardrop shaped petals at the bottom of the flower to kind of represent it opening up. So the more open you want it, the more you'll add these petals, and the less open, the less you will add. For both peonies and roses, you want to leave some white space between the petals so that it's clear that they're individual petals and you can still see the shape of the flower. Not sure how to say this correctly. I think anemones is how you say it, but essentially any 4 or 5 petal flower. To create this flower, what you need to do is paint 4 or 5 teardrop or oval shaped petals, and then while the petals are still wet, you can add another color in the middle to just bleed into it. The beauty about loose florals is that it doesn't have to be perfect, so don't emphasize on trying to make all the petals the same size, because if anything, that makes it look less realistic and less like you want it to. Larger versions resemble anemones, but doing smaller ones can look more like blue-eyed grass or like geraniums, maybe even lilacs. So you can really play around by using these simple flower and changing the colors, changing the shape, changing the size to make it represent a completely different flower. For daisies, or in theory if you color them differently, sunflowers, I start off by doing the center. So again, another semicircle. Gotta love these semicircles. If it's a flower facing straight ahead, then it will be a complete circle, but to start off I'll do one that is facing up and towards the left. So I start off by doing the center or the stamen. I then use a really light color, a light gray in this instance, and I'm just painting the shadows of each petal and leaving the white space to represent the petal. If I was doing a sunflower, then I would paint the petals in yellow. But for daisies, I paint the outline and where I think the shadows will be. The next flowers are essentially buds or tulips. I tend to paint them in the same way by starting off and doing almost like these V shapes or incomplete ovals that very much resembles the anemone's petals, but I do one to represent a flower, and that to me is a bud. And then if I want to make it a tulip, then I would just make it bigger and add more details like I'm doing there. And then of course making it bigger, which I will show you later on in the video. I tend to add these florals to quite a lot of my bouquets as embellishments, and it took me ages to figure out what they're called, and I think that they essentially represent wisteria, but could also be small lilacs if they were in a different colour, or catmint, or something else called monk's hood. But essentially they're nice embellishments to add to bouquets. Here I'm showing you how I paint my tulips. So again, just making them bigger, having that teardrop or single petal shape, and then adding a bit more colours to make it bleed into the rest of the painting. And that is essentially all the flowers that you need to know in order to create wonderful bouquets. You can change the colors, you can change the sizes, but that is more than enough to get you started to create hundreds of bouquets. And I'm going to do a quick speed painting here to just show you how all these flowers would come together to make a beautiful bouquet. So I'm starting off by painting the peony and having it open up, but not as open as the one in the example. I'm adding my all-time favorite, the rose, and then the anemones, but varying it in sizes as I did earlier, just to make them a bit smaller. Here I'm adding the daisy, so again starting with the center and then using a very light wash of grey to paint in the shadows. And this is a technique that you use not only for daisies, but any flower that you want to paint in white. You don't, obviously you can't really paint in the white, so what you're painting is the shadows. Here again adding another anemone and tulip, and then add a few details like stamens and start doing the wisteria. And I paint them by essentially doing small dots in a rough triangular shape, getting bigger as I get towards the base. So if you look at most of my pieces, you will see that I'm using these flowers. I definitely have my favorites, but you can get so much variation by using them in different ways, in different shapes, in different compositions, in different colors, in different sizes. So this is most definitely more than enough. This is primarily what I tend to use. I build up on this and give you more techniques in other videos. And this is the final snapshot of the watercolor floral cheat sheet. So I hope that you enjoyed learning the basics. I will definitely be expanding on this video in the future, because now that you know the shapes and now that you know the strokes, you can expand on doing things like adding color, painting wet on wet rather than just wet on dry. Like, there's just so many different things that you can do, but most definitely with just using these flowers in different colors, in different arrangements, you can achieve wonders. Let me know down below what your favorite flower is, or if there's a flower that you think is quite dissimilar to the ones that I've included that you would like to know how to tackle. If you have any other questions or there's a flower that you'd like me to paint, then let me know down below in the comments. See you next week. Bye.